Okay. Hello, beautiful humans. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. This is our first episode of Orangepillers. And so essentially, the idea with this is to create a podcast where people who spend a good amount of their energy orange pilling, and whatever that means, and we'll get into like how we define that even, can share stories, share perspectives, and share lessons about what they've learned about the art and science of orange pilling. So my name's Nick, and I'm here with Pavao.
Hello.
And Pavao and I did a podcast a while back about his project in Rab, which is literally a beastly orange pilling project in a city in
Yeah.
Croatia. So we could talk about that. But I think having an intention when you're doing a project is important. So for me, the intention is create an opportunity to have informal monthly conversations where orange pillars can just talk, and really to cultivate collective orange pilling intelligence, right? This Thich Nhat Hanh has a great quote in one of his books, and it says that combining our experiences and insights leads to a collective insight that can be wiser than the sum of its parts. And the idea that me having a conversation with Pavao or two orange pillars having a conversation can result in insights that are greater than the sum of the individuals. So I think the idea with this is the pilot episode. We'll do a value for value podcast that features orange pillars, and we'll be able to use whatever funds we receive to help Pavao on his quest to orange pill Rab. So Pavao, you want to introduce yourself just for people who don't know us, like maybe a 30-second bio, and then we'll just dig into orange pilling.
Sure. Thank you. My name is Pavao, and basically, I consider myself like a Bitcoiner, freedom-oriented pleb. In my quote-unquote former life, I was like an entrepreneur. So I ran an educational technology startup, which I'm still kind of a little shareholder in. But in last 2 years, I'm basically working in the Bitcoin space, mainly on safedin.com. So on Safedin, a Moose platform for Austrian economics and Bitcoin economics. So, and in my kind of free time, I'm orange pilling my family, friends, broader community here. So, yeah, that's what I'm kind of doing at the moment.
Powerful. Safedin's podcast on Lex, like today is May 19th.
Yeah.
Dude, his podcast with Lex was tremendous. I think he that's like a master class. That's like a summation of the Bitcoin standard, right? And some more, I guess, relevant, timely points. So yeah, listen to that. I got a couple of my family members to listen to that, and that was like, I saw some light bulbs. I kind of felt some light bulbs go off in some of their heads based on the questions they're asking. So very cool. My name's Nick. I create content for the Bitcoin Stoa. I'm just a Bitcoiner. A lot of people know me from helping get Bitcoin to the Freedom Truckers in Ottawa. And since December, I've basically become a professional orange pillar, which means that, I define professional as that is the primary outlet for my energy and the way I intend to make income to pay for my lifestyle. So let's just start with what the hell is orange pilling? Because I think this is a subjective term. Many people use the term, and I think many people have maybe different, I think the term means different things to different people. So even just to start, like, how do you define orange pilling? Let's get into the weeds of what does orange pilling mean? Some people use it as an action verb in the present, like I'm orange pilling someone. People also use it in the past tense as something that they have done, right? I orange pilled this person. So I think the nuance of like, what does orange pilling mean? If it's used in the past tense, what is the metric that determines whether you are successful or not? So yeah, what is orange pilling to you?
In the simplest term, it's basically explaining Bitcoin to a person who doesn't have any at the moment. Usually I like to start with let's say the idea, the fact that the vast majority of people have heard about Bitcoin at least once in their life. Nobody's really going to, if you ask them, have you heard about Bitcoin? Very rarely you are going to come across someone who is going to say, no, I never heard about it. So at least 9 out of 10 people have heard about it at least. But hearing about it and actually owning some sats, getting off zero, that's something else. That's huge chasm between, hearing about Bitcoin and actually going out of your way to get some in your possession. And this is where Orangepiller actually comes in. It's usually, at least in my case, it's I can orange pill people who already know me and trust me, or if I orange pill someone who I just met, then it means that they usually have to have they have to feel a level of conviction in what I'm talking about such high that it breaks all of their kind of objections to the idea of getting into Bitcoin, getting to hold Bitcoin. Because all of us, or most of us, when we started out our Bitcoin journeys, we had certain objections, certain skepticism, right, about this, because we are so steeped into the life of daily life, and using money that we are using fiat currencies, in our daily life. It's like fish in the water, right? So fish cannot really explain what's water. It's just something that's around her. It's used to it. So that's what it is with other people. I mean, with normies, so to speak, with no coiners. They are using fiat currency in their daily life, and they are not really thinking about it until they start thinking about it. And then when they start, if they get orange pilled, and then once they start to feel and to experience how using Bitcoin in your daily life looks like, which is like a volatile deflationary currency, deflationary money, that it's more valuable over time, versus fiat, which is like stable but it's worth less over time. That's something that's very, very life-changing, really. So for me, orange pilling is just being able to talk with people about their lives, about their whatever they have, like their life situation, their business, their family situation, their finance situation. This finance, money touches every part of human endeavor, right? And when Bitcoin comes in, that's when things start to change. So that's what orange pilling means to me.
Yeah, and you mentioned get off zero. I think for me, the end point of the work of orange pilling someone comes when they get off zero. Oh, I think I lost you for a sec. Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
There we go. I paused it for a sec. Yeah, I think the whole notion that, okay, if orange pilling is a continuum, they go from zero knowledge of Bitcoin, which I include, like you said, most people have heard the word, have received at minimum one Bitcoin touch point where they've heard the word, right? It's pretty rare that no one's heard the word by now. But they might not be interested, and they might not be curious at all. So the whole idea of like zero knowledge of Bitcoin, the process of understanding it, the end of the continuum is getting off zero. And I don't count gifts, right? If you give someone $5 in Bitcoin, I don't really count that as getting off zero, because they didn't do it on their own volition, and there was no conviction needed for that. And this whole notion that orange pilling is really guiding people along that continuum, right? And I used to think of I think sometimes it's easy to think of orange pilling as an event, like you orange pilled someone, like it's one thing. And I think it's helpful to look at it from the standpoint of it being a process, right? Whereby you're helping them navigate the continuum, but you're really, the work is to help reduce the friction of navigating that continuum. It's not to like teach them, it's to point them in the right direction, to slowly build their understanding. And one thing you said there was this notion that like people, you start with orange pilling people who trust you. And that fundamentally, I think orange pilling is relationship building, right? Like trust must be a precursor before someone is willing to have a conversation and believe and have faith that what you're saying is true and that you're saying it for the right reasons. So, which means orange pilling is fucking hard because human relationships are not a simple thing, right? And you know, one thing I've started to feel, you know, I studied the psychology of change because I come from a health background, and fundamentally helping someone improve their health is fundamentally helping them change their mind to think that health is actually important enough to spend their time on, and that they can build some confidence knowing that they can actually do something for their health. And I think Bitcoin is the same thing, right? Bitcoin is fundamentally or orange pilling is understanding how people change their mind and why they change their mind. And I think most of the time, human action comes through the avoidance of pain, right? Like most things. And this idea that I think a lot of people are experiencing pain right now, most people misdiagnose the source of pain, right? Like the gas is too high. Well, the source of that pain is the gas station ripping me off. And so this whole constant misdiagnosis of socioeconomic pain, let's call it, is really trying to help people understand their problems deeper, right? Like if someone understands their problem, a problem they're facing, and then you can help them orient to the fact that Bitcoin could be a viable solution to that problem or part of the solution. You know, it really is like an almost like an art. And I think it's, you know, it's if you treat it as, it's very easy to get frustrated because most people don't bite on the Bitcoin the first time you talk about it, right? It doesn't matter how well you talk about it, what you point them to. And, you know, there's almost like a fork at that point. It's like, well, I can either just write this person off as like, you're going to get screwed over by fiat. I don't have the time to help you. And so what, you know, like what differentiates whether you go down one fork or the other? One fork is have fun staying poor. The other fork is, well, okay, you don't have it yet, but I'm here if you get curious, and here are some resources to learn. You know, like what determines what path you go down? Because it feels way better just to have fun staying poor, right? Depending on the person. And yeah, I just think people fundamentally don't understand that most of their pain and suffering comes from this underlying fiat mindset and fiat system that all of our decisions are trickled, are byproducts of. And the cognitive dissonance of realizing that everything you've based your life on, the monetary system you've based your life on, is total bullshit and is literally screwing you over, is a very steep obstacle, right? I felt it when I first got into Bitcoin, and I know I see people feel it where they're like, that can't be true. There's no way. You must be wrong. You must be one of those crypto people. And it's like, okay, let's keep working on this. And so what gives you the motivation to go down that fork where it's like, okay, I'm going to keep working on it. This is meaningful enough for me to keep working on. It is difficult work. Most of the time it's high energy required. So you have to put a lot of energy into it. It's not like you're getting paid for it, you know, tangibly. I mean, you know, it depends what time horizon you're looking at. Because to me, having a Bitcoiner surround me in my life it's priceless, and it's a long-term thing. But what motivates you to do this work, to do the work of orange pilling?
Well, it's probably a bit kind of selfish, actually. I mean, when I talk about Bitcoin with someone, it's mostly because I get like better understanding and better grasp of it once I have to basically explain it to someone or answer their objections about it. And And then this is one level. Then another level is the fact that then I kind of realize that if I am helping another person, move their life savings into Bitcoin, then this is going to make both their life better and my life better, because another hodler, right, is going to increase the kind of the purchasing power floor of Bitcoin, right? And when I see a person who I orange pilled, then orange pilling their circle of influence, their family, their friends, then this means that basically like I'm kind of contributing to growing this big network, this network where each one of us is like a node that's the whole network is becoming more valuable for all of us. So it's both like selfish but selfless on the other hand. It's perfect. There is no like there were some situations where I had so much frustration talking about it, especially with people who are older, like
Yes.
baby boomer generation, for example. They are, oh my God, it's like so. It's I had to like. There is the one lady who I had to, explain the difference between holding Bitcoin on an exchange versus holding Bitcoin in her own possession, meaning she controls the private key. I would say at least 200 times, and she still doesn't really get it. She still cannot grasp this idea that she would have to make sure that she does not lose the private key, because if she does, this means that she would lose all of her money. And so but then again, when I like when I get frustrated with that, then I just try to remember that the fact that I went through this ordeal of trying to explain it so many times, and I still maybe failed to do so. Still, this process of this time spent was time well worth investing in such things, because I always come out of this conversation with more conviction, with stronger, like I have easier time speaking about Bitcoin again in another situation, and this is just multiplying over time. And I just wanted to also say that for me also, orange pilling is, yes, it is a process, and it's a process where you have two very distinctive points. One is before while you are a no coiner, so before you get off zero, and then after you get off zero, after you start getting some sats. I also found out that there are, like, with my orange pilled group, there are people who need more hand holding after they got orange pilled, and there are people who have less. And I still have so I think that what I tell everybody is, once they get off zero, then they should count 4 years after that point, at least 4 years, but 4 years would be, let's say, a time target, which is 210,000 blocks, right? Because if you take any point in time in Bitcoin's price and subtract 210,000 blocks, you will arrive at the lower price, which means in other words, if you start with any time you start, add 4 years, and 100% of the time your Bitcoin is going to appreciate in purchasing power by a lot. And I still think that theory holds, and this is what I constantly repeat to my group, because, for example, now we had a crash again. We are again kind of bearish and so on. And someone who started just a couple of months ago is maybe they are scared, right? So that's when
tested now.
getting tested now. That's when I remind them, okay, you just started out, like you are maybe 5 months in, just count how many days do you have left, in your 4-year journey, right? So you're just getting started. So take a deep breath. Thich Nhat Hanh is excellent, like for this situation. Just start breathing in, breathing out, and if you feel too much, kind of angst around this situation, if you are not oh my God, Bitcoin is on sale, I want to increase my position if I can, that means that you are probably too exposed right
Yes.
now. You are just getting started. You are just a little baby. You have to kind of grow into it. So that's the situation with orange pilling, and then when I drop motivation, sometimes even in spite of all of this, then I just try to imagine how are my orange pill group going to look like if they continue accumulating sats in 4 years. So that's 2026, let's say May 2026. I just imagine, okay, they have accumulated a part of their paycheck every month or every 2 weeks or whatever, part of their income for 4 years, with a very high level of consistency, and they have seen their purchasing power appreciating 10x in that period of time. And I just want to kind of teleport myself into that future timeline and just imagine, okay, this is how am I feeling right now? Do I now I'm kind of happy right now when I see them making their paying off their mortgages or getting out of debt, or buying something that they are very passionate about, or whatever. Just whatever you can do with once you have a good stack, then you can do whatever whatever you want. Your life is definitely going to be better. So
Yes. And
that's an instrument.
That's a great point, where it's like, okay, if you're anxious or nervous at any point based on the Bitcoin price, it's a signal that there's a mismatch, right? There's a mismatch between the amount of your wealth that is in Bitcoin and your conviction or confidence in Bitcoin. So you have two options. The better option is to boost your conviction, is to, instead of stacking more sats, stack more knowledge, because then you realign things to feel more comfortable that your Bitcoin is safe and that is a good it is a good trade to continue making, right? It's always, I think Michael Saylor says it, it's always a good trade to trade an inferior asset for a superior one. And the fact that nothing changed with Bitcoin in this dip, humans have just become confused again, and the people who are determining the Bitcoin price don't understand Bitcoin very well yet. And I think this idea that when people do get off zero, if you orange pill, like there's a lot of people that I quote unquote orange pilled, they've gotten off zero. It doesn't really, you still remain a resource for them, right? But I think the fundamental difference that I see is that when someone has gotten off zero on their own volition, now that they have skin in the game, their learning journey is more self-directed, and their intrinsic motivation to continue learning no longer needs constant input of energy to get someone to get them to a point, right? They've gotten to that point. They have skin in the game. It is in their self-interest to learn more about this thing. And typically, I don't know anyone who has gotten skin in the game, learned more about Bitcoin, and not acquired more Bitcoin, right? And everyone goes about that at their own pace, right? Like some people go at warp speed and just go down the rabbit, like literally fall down the rabbit hole. And in a year they're like, yeah, I sold my house and I bought Bitcoin, and now I just research all day about how to hold my own keys. It's like, okay, that's one path. But other people will take it very slow, right? Like other people might not have the bandwidth. Everyone, I think, right now is under this stress and pressure whereby there's not a whole lot of extra bandwidth to spend on things, right? At the end of the day, all they have the energy to do is just like watch Netflix and go to bed. So I think it's important to be sensitive to the fact that most of the world is fucking under the gun right now because of all the mayhem going on. But I think one of the biggest things that motivates me is like Bitcoin has fundamentally changed my life, and given, now that I have a reliable store of value that I feel confident in, the stress associated with how the fuck do I plan for the future in this world that is uncertain on a monthly basis is gone. And it's just like this ability to take a breath and be like, oh, it's going to be okay. Like I just have, this is the most important thing to learn about. And this thing has improved my life. Therefore, I want to make it available to as many other people so they can improve their own lives and then improve the lives of others. Because like you said, it's like once someone takes the orange pill, they want to tell other people about it once they've gotten to a threshold of conviction. Usually when they get off zero, for selfish reasons, you know, like more people on the network equals a more valuable network asset. And also more people on the network equals a better world, right? Like I don't want to be a Bitcoiner living in a fiat neighborhood. Like being the only person who's happy where everyone else is miserable and poor is not actually a great place to be in, right? And yeah, I mean, everyone brings their own motivation, but the thread of the conversations I've been having is like people are like, Bitcoin has done amazing things in my life. Therefore, I want to pay that back and pay it forward by helping make other people's lives better. And back to that comment about boomers, I can definitely relate about that. And I think it boils down, it comes back to the pain thing, right? All human behavior is guided by pain, right? Or the avoidance of pain, let's say. You know, boomers don't experience very much pain, right? The fiat system has served them very well and continues to do so if you're willing to just keep blind to it, right? Like my father is heavily invested in real estate. He's never lived through a time where real estate hasn't been an insane investment and has no pain in the fiat system. In fact, he has massive gain. Therefore, he has no reason to change. The lady you talked to about getting her keys off the exchange has not experienced pain. When she gets rug pulled or the exchange goes bankrupt and they steal all her Bitcoin, you know, some people have to experience the pain moment. Obviously, it's better to help them avoid that. But some people will simply not have an impetus for action until pain is felt. It's kind of like health, right? No one gives a shit about their health until they experience pain and disease, and then they're like, well, shit, I got to take care of myself. And, you know, the hope is that people don't get there. But yeah, I think boomers just don't experience enough pain. They're so comfortable right now with the fiat system, and it is very comfortable to stay ignorant to the long-term implications of the fiat system. So yeah, it's very interesting. I mean, it's so foreign, this whole idea. I mean, I think the technology of Bitcoin, clearly it's a hard thing to digest, right? It just is. Because even if you are I mean, look at Michael Saylor. He's literally a technologist. He's written about technology his whole life, and even initially, he did not grasp Bitcoin, and
Yep.
he's a super genius. So, you know, someone like that takes a little bit of time and a little bit of work. I know Eric Bigfund was the guy credited with orange pilling him. I think it requires, as someone who finds meaning in orange pilling, I think our dedication and patience and commitment to orange pilling as a low time preference vocation is incredibly important, because the openness and the humility also to not just tell someone to have fun staying poor is so important, because you know, you don't want to waste any opportunity. And I think one thing I've learned is like every opportunity to talk about Bitcoin where someone expresses curiosity, even as long as it's in good faith, right? Like you can tell people trying to hook you in, and you could tell they just want a reason to talk shit about Bitcoin. But anyone who brings up a curiosity with Bitcoin in good faith is a precious opportunity that should not be wasted. And I think that's where my motivation comes in, where it's like more people are expressing curiosity about Bitcoin because there's more touch points in the world mentioning Bitcoin, whether that's like a legacy media news article that maybe they talk shit about Bitcoin, but the word Bitcoin being there is a touch point for people. Your pin that you have on your shirt, right? Like exactly. I wear a hat and toque that says Bitcoin. Like these are all our efforts to bring up more touch points. And the amount of times it's actually worked, where I've been wearing a hat or a toque and someone says, "Oh, is that Bitcoin?" And they inquire about it. It's great. And I know it's glorious. And you also mentioned the fact that to really when you teach Bitcoin, it actually gives you a better understanding of Bitcoin. I think the best way to understand something is to teach it.
Exactly.
And every person that objects, or every, I don't want to call it a failed attempt, but every attempt to bring up Bitcoin and the inability to meet an objection with a with a productive answer is a learning opportunity to get better at explaining Bitcoin. Um, what are some of the tougher objections that you've been faced with? Like, what are any memorable moments where like someone voiced something and you're like, I don't know how to answer that yet, or I don't have a good answer for that? Anything that comes to mind?
I mean, well, not really, because I kind of went through all of the like classic, talking points, which basically, I mean, I guess the hardest objections actually are when like let's say, for example, I had a guy who is he's like a gold bug or gold buggish. He saves, like, his family, they have a bakery business here in Rab, and once I start, there was a situation when I just mentioned that he was complaining about the price inflation, and things like that. And I mentioned maybe Bitcoin is a solution. Then immediately he said, no, 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 I know everything about it. I am I finished my economy degree. I run a successful business. I'm a successful businessman. My family is successful. I think I only trust gold, right? Because I can touch it. I can. So I for the if shit hits the fan, I have my cup of gold bars and gold coins that I stashed away. I just don't trust anything that's not, that I cannot touch. And like that's an objection that I cannot really. I mean, I could try to. I tried to maybe. I mean, I could try to explain that having something in a physical realm that you can touch is really like you are touching the gold bar, but really if you touch anything else, the fact that the gold bar has much more value, purchasing power than something else, is because gold bar is harder to produce more of. um, you know if the demand for gold goes up, it's harder to produce more of gold, and it keeps accumulating over time because of its chemical properties, versus, I don't know, a copper, which you can still touch, but it's easier to produce more, versus Bitcoin, which you cannot produce more of if the demand goes up. And it's, I mean, you can imagine the electric power plants and mining rigs that are basically producing these coins. That's something that you can touch, but maybe that's the moment where some people just cannot they cannot cross this chasm. They cannot really enter into the, so to speak, metaphysical realm and understand that Bitcoin is really an information about the proof of work, about the opportunity cost of energy that went into mining of it. It's not just conjured out of thin air, as some of these usually more educated gold bugs or no coiners that are very bent on misunderstanding. I think it's always good, kind of goes maybe it's goes down into that meme of the IQ curve, where if no, that's really, it's really true from my experience, that people who are like who have very very strong but deep convictions, they are not usually, they are kind of in this middle of capacity of understanding. But I think everyone is going to get I mean, if we are objectively speaking, like, Bitcoin is still very new. It's 13 years. Like, once let's just look at the internet, right? Today everybody's using internet. It's like nobody's really thinking about it anymore. And if in like early 90s, yeah, you had like internet enthusiasts who were very passionate about it. They were talking about, I don't know, routers and modems, and how can you build a website. Imagine that you can have a website on the internet, and then you can buy things from it. You can send an email over this new network. And 99% of people were just, what's that? Like, we are in that phase now with Bitcoin. So we are talking about it. We are talking about how you can secure your Bitcoin, how you can send it, what's mining, what's Lightning network, how could all of that. We are us innovators. Basically, we are still. I don't even see us in this early majority.
No,
kind of.
I think we're pioneers still.
Legal,
We're the
yeah,
nerds that knew about the internet before
we're
people knew about
nerds,
the
right?
internet.
So let's say in 10, 15 years, nobody's really going to think about it. Really, they will just behave differently. People will simply start understanding that yeah, this is new form of money. We are now using it, and this is a different form of money, because before, like the whole 20th and 20th century, we kind of our parents, grandparents, they lived in a society where their money, the longer they held on to it, the worse they got off, because the money lost value over time, versus our new money that we are using now is gaining value over time. And it's kind of simple like that. And but to get there, of course, if you if you are into Bitcoin now in 2022, yeah, you will get kind of there in this world much faster, and it's going to be much more volatile, and you will get like more. This is the return that you are basically getting if you take the risk to learn it now, when it's not so easy to learn. I mean, that the same with internet. Like if you started, but also if you started an internet, let's say, business, or you were into it in early 90s, chances are that you maybe haven't been able to make it, right? Maybe you failed in that. Many people have been have lost their money in early days of internet boom, so to speak. And so also many people are losing money now, both on Bitcoin and on, not even to start talking about shitcoin land. It's like, I mean, I also know one of my friends who she bought Bitcoin on the way up in bull run 2017, and sold it, like, I don't know, maybe she bought it at 3K and sold it at 6K, and she missed the whole bear market, the learning opportunity of the bear market, and so on. And she's still thinking that Bitcoin is a Ponzi today. She listens to Warren Buffett and invests in Berkshire Hathaway stock, which is like, she needs to come back to, she was like Bitcoin is like electricity, right? So it's very useful technology. But when electricity was introduced, I think Michael Saylor also likes to talk about this, many people were scared about it. They didn't understand it. People got injured with electricity. Some people got killed with electricity.
And they still do. They still do.
And they still do. But today, I'd say maybe 1 in 1,000, or
sure.
how many. I mean, people know usually that electricity is something that you don't put your sharp metal things, objects in your electricity sockets and so on. So it's like, they know how to use this technology. Bitcoin is like that. This is very, very powerful machine that we are now starting to use. I mean, it's messing with our perception of time. You have to understand, which is hard for people to, when you are steeped into the fiat system, fiat standard, you are basically, your perception of time is warped, right?
Yeah.
you are unable to, I mean, you can fantasize about the future, but you cannot really like conceive and plan the future more than maybe a month or a year in advance. Well, a year is already a lot. Like most people really think about how they are going to, move from month to month in the fiat standard.
Yes.
And with Bitcoin, like suddenly you basically in the short term you have this very high volatility, very high fluctuation of your purchasing power, versus in the long term you're much more certain, right? You are planning in this 4 year cycles of time, right? Like I, for example, I mean that's how I when I start talking about people with people about what's going to happen in 2024 and then 2028 and then 2032 and then 2036, right? We are going to have a nice architecture change in probably that 4 halvings away. That's like I don't know, 12 16 years down the line. They would like, how can you, I mean, what are you talking about? Yeah,
Yeah.
but I'm talking about
Yeah.
that's it's not like I'm pulling these numbers out of my ass. It's
Right.
really like that. So you can verify it yourself. You can calculate you know
There's a sense
your
of certainty, right? Like
yeah,
the timeline horizon for fiat is uncertain within 6 months,
exactly.
right? Like we don't know what's happening, and the acceleration of uncertainty has almost become exponential, whereby not only are things continuing to be more uncertain, they're getting more uncertain at a faster rate. And
Yep.
so it's impossible to plan your life in a world where the uncertainty is accelerating and growing. And when you talk about shoving a fork into an outlet, it's like the equivalent of that is leverage buying 20 to 1 Bitcoin and hoping to make a buck. It's like, yeah, the likelihood is you're going to get electrocuted like that. And if you don't believe me, go ahead. I would advise against it. But if the only way you will know for sure that that's the case, that temptation is not worth doing, is to try it, then okay, I hope you stay safe. And the gold bug, that's a really interesting one, because I've only had probably 2 interactions with really hardcore gold bugs that were against Bitcoin. And I think the mistakes I made early on were to criticize gold, right? Like these people, because the way I look at it, I'm like, dude, this person's already 90% a Bitcoiner. The last 10%, they're just not getting. And it's, I want them to know. And so I remember I started criticizing gold, being like, well, what are your 10-year returns on gold? Like, if you correct for inflation, like they're not that impressive. Like, sure, you've maintained your purchasing power, but it's probably not better than the S&P 500 index. And compared to Bitcoin, it's zero. It's like a rounding error on a 10-year horizon. And I think I basically criticized their child, and they immediately wrote me off. But with gold, it's like, I don't know. I get it. I understand. And so my approach now, like the lesson I learned from those interactions are, in future, if I had that interaction to do over again, the first thing I would ask is, why is gold valuable? Why do you think gold is valuable? Why do you think inflation happens? What is the utility of gold in future? If you get to a point where like I'm putting my wealth in gold because in 5 years, these shit coins we call fiat are going to be worth way less, and I want to have that gold available to use to buy things in future, right? Like we're not keeping gold for the sake of gold, we're keeping gold for the sake of being able to buy things with that gold in future. How many people are going to accept a borrow gold? What is the process of finding a buyer, and what if governments don't allow you to cash in gold? Like there's so many variables where it's like, okay, I understand why you're doing it, and I agree with all the principles of scarcity and sound money and being able to actually because I mean, with gold bugs, if they hold their own gold, they're holding their own keys. They're already on that boat too. And it is a hard, those people are typically conservative because gold is just a conservative, reliable store of value. But, it'll be interesting when people experience pain and they realize the potential of Bitcoin as not only a store of value, but also a medium of exchange, which I think is not there with gold, unless you digitize it, in which case you're basically back to fiat. Yeah, it's interesting. The gold bugs can be hard ones to crack, but they're already Bitcoiners. They just don't know it yet. And that last 10% can be so hard because in order to stay in gold, you have to basically have and the certainty is the weird thing, right? Like that person sounds like they were very certain Bitcoin doesn't work. And some people will be curious, right? If they meet a Bitcoiner, they'll be curious and be like, I don't know why you like Bitcoin. Like, instead of saying, well, you must be stupid because gold is clearly the best, the best way. It's like, I wonder what touch points that person needs to get in order to be open-minded that in a digital world, there is a superior alternative to a rock, a shiny rock, which has, it has worked, but it hasn't been working that well. And I think the weird thing with gold is the manipulatability of gold. Like gold should be worth way more, I think. And I think gold bugs even know that too, right? Like they've been, yelling from the mountaintop for years saying like, get into gold. This system we've created is a mirage and the mirage will eventually be blown away. So like get safe. And so they've been banging that drum for so long that for them to admit that there's a superior alternative is probably like a little bit uncomfortable. But those are good conversations to have because you learn a lot. I learn a lot from, I think what I learn a lot of times with people that have just written Bitcoin off is the danger of certainty. Like I'm just taking the perspective that I'm not certain about anything. Like I'm certain about gravity because every time I test it, it tells me it's true. But I think a lot of times certainty can be dangerous. And even certainty, if we flip that around, like the certainty that Bitcoin is the solution to all problems and everything is going to be fine is also a slippery sense of certainty because it removes your need to continue to be informed and continue to sort of like deepen your understanding so that you're aware of things that could come up. But yeah, boomers are tricky ones. With that said, I mean, my mom gets it. My mom has Bitcoin. She has it in an ETF right now. Mm-hmm. And the goal was, and even that was like, okay, do I try and convince my mom to hold her own keys? Which she is nowhere near. Like the path to get her there is a very long one and will take a lot of work, and she will probably have some anxiety around that concept, right? Or do I take this opportunity where she's willing to buy Bitcoin, but wants to do it in a way that makes sense to her, get her in the ETF, and then each year sell a little chunk of that ETF, buy actual Bitcoin, and learn how to hold their own keys with less risk? That's the path we chose. And I think what it allowed her to do is see number go up and build conviction during times when it goes down while she, sort of wraps her head around the concept of being able to take ownership and sovereignty of her own wealth. And I think too often early in the days, I was like, if you don't hold your own keys, don't bother buying Bitcoin. That was my approach. And I remember listening to a podcast by Michael Saylor, and he was like, you know what? Get people on the network by any means necessary. Obviously be safe, right? Like don't go through some shitcoin exchange and think it's okay to hold your keys on there when there's a risk. But, I think there's probably more, there's clearly more risk holding it in some sort of ETF or stock because of the whole system. Like you don't actually own anything. Someone has an IOU to you that you have this amount of thing. If the whole machine collapses, then your stuff probably goes to dust. It is a risk. It's probably not like an existential risk yet. But if that gets people closer to the point of holding their own keys, I think that's probably good. And I think with the boomer generation, it might be a mandatory step, right? I don't know if people can go from nothing to shattering their entire framework of what money is to taking full ownership and custody of their own wealth in some technology they don't fully understand. Like that could be a hard sell. What are your thoughts on the idea that there maybe is a spectrum and anyone you get on the network, while mitigating the significant risks is good? What are your thoughts on that versus like the really hardcore one where if you don't hold your keys, don't bother?
Well, I mean, yeah, it's very good question. I'm not sure that like everybody is going to be able to hold their own keys. But first of all, like we are talking about Bitcoin in 2022, right? So the majority of Bitcoin transactions are happening still on chain, right? So you are
Correct.
you have to have, you know, the address, the UTXO, you have to send it, you have to, you know how to open the mempool, and you know how to size your mining fee. Many people, you know, the majority of networks still that doesn't transact in Lightning, right? And even Lightning still is not so, it's easier, it's getting easier, but it's still very, very early.
Yes.
And the idea that everybody is going to hold their own money in, you know, self custody is, I think, wrong. It's not going to happen that way, because especially with boomer generation, and with the amount of wealth that some boomers have, I wouldn't take into possession that much money, because what if something like, what's going to happen with my, you know, heirs, my offspring, my, you know, it's like you want to have this trust relationship with your custodian, but I think that the nature of Bitcoin custodianship is changing. It's not like in the traditional finance world, you have this big custodian that basically has all of the control. Like, you are the owner, but they are in possession of your wealth, and you are completely basically trusting them, and they are, you know, they are definitely good, reputable custodians around. There are definitely some that that, you know, are not, that are rehypothecating your wealth, that are, you know, probably going to collapse in this, you know, time that we are facing in the next couple of years, right? So I think Bitcoin custodianship is changing because you have this idea of collaborative custody, right? You have who is really I can offer maybe well, none of my Orangepill group is at that point, but one guy is probably going to, you know, at some point in the future need probably my help to set up a multi-signature, you know, wallet, where I'm probably going to keep one key and he's going to keep two, so 2 of 3 multi-sig, which is, you know, a way for him to still, you know that if he loses one, that I can still help him, you know, retrieve the coins. Or, for example, what would be a situation if someone dies and, let's say, they basically have a will, how they are going to track, what are they going to do with their coins. So that's something that's going to, you know, evolve as the network evolves. Also, you have this idea of this is something that fascinates me in the last few weeks, that I kind of started listening to some podcasts with, you know, projects like Galloy, right? Bitcoin Beach, like community bank, or, you know, in a later iteration, it's going to be like federated Shawmian Mint, right? So you basically have, I don't know, here on the island of Rab, I still don't see every single person, for example, holding, or let's say having their own Lightning node running, right? They are not going to be simply, it's not going to work out like that. But I can see, for example, a federated Shawmian Mint, where there is like, I don't know, a couple of thousand people who are pooling their funds inside this mint, which is connected with other mints through Lightning, you know, channel structure. And this mints may settle, you know, their liquidity, you know, on chain when they open or close channels with each other. I simply don't see, like, in 10 years, I don't see people making on-chain Lightning transaction. The vast majority of them, on-chain Bitcoin transactions, the vast majority of people will never see how that looks like. So we are kind of in a very unique time of Bitcoin adoption, where we know how to, we know what's private key. Most people won't really think about it like that. They will have trusted, but like when I speak with people who are no coiners, and they all have, and here in Croatia, all of them have bank accounts. I'm not living in such a bad country where people bad like such a low income country where people do not have bank accounts. Here people do have bank accounts, but their relationship with their bank is not really one of they don't go into their bank to be to ask some advice on how to what to do with their money. They mostly just use their checking accounts. They get constantly marketed new loan products and so on. So it's like Bitcoiners now, especially like Orangepillers, hardcore maxes, who are pushing this charge forward. They are kind of becoming this new, community bank, people who are, but in traditional bank, usually, I mean, a banker could actually, like in the gold era, like a local banker who had all the gold coins and gold bars stored in the bank and, gave out certificates for it. He had tremendous amount of power because the gold in your bank is much more valuable than the gold in your house, because it's very hard to transact with gold. It's very hard to verify whether you have a real gold or you have just some mixture of tungsten and gold and so on. So the trust with the old system was actually very valuable. You had like banks had to have this for gold standard to work, you had to have gold in the bank. Versus with Bitcoin, you don't, right? You can always, like if you're ready for it, if you feel like you can do it. I mean, it's still not so hard. Like it still really comes down to memorizing 12 words. Push comes to shove. It's not so hard, but it's psychologically hard to actually do it. Versus technically, like I think technically speaking, you can learn it pretty quickly.
It's insane. It has gotten so much simpler.
Yeah,
I mean, it's hard. The spectrum of time is hard to place yourself back at certain times, right? Like, what was it like when I first started? Well, it was insanely complex and like very intimidating. And the fact that I can show my mom how to boot up Green Wallet on her phone and write down 12 words, and she can at a simple level understand that those 12 words are essentially as good as her Bitcoin and serve as a backup if her phone gets destroyed. Like, she can wrap her head around that. She's not a technologist. She doesn't engage with technology that much, but she's like, okay, that makes sense to me, worded like that. I must keep this piece of paper safe. If I lose it and my phone gets destroyed, it's gone. No one's bailing me out. And I think this whole idea that not very many people are going to fully hold their keys for their wealth, especially boomers, but I also think they're not necessarily mutually exclusive, right? Holding your keys versus not are not mutually exclusive. I think when someone trusts a custodian to hold some of their Bitcoin, they should also be engaging with the process of understanding how to hold their own keys with small amounts to experiment with, because you can make mistakes with small amounts. And that deepening the understanding and building the confidence is what allows you to say, okay, well, 10% of what I have with the custodian, I now feel comfortable holding myself, right? Like it was intimidating. Now I understand it a bit better. I've engaged with the process of deepening my understanding. The technology landscape is so much more intuitive. If I can run a fucking node, anyone can run a node, right? Like, it takes work. Like, it took effort and time and energy, and you have to feel it worthwhile enough to invest your time and energy into understanding something to a point where you're not going to shoot yourself in the foot in order to do that. But at the end of the day, and I think you're right. Like, where we get to where our boomers are all using Bitcoin is where they're using it without even understanding how it works. When we get to the point, like when I click an electrical switch, I don't know what the fuck is going on. All I know is when I press this button, the light goes on. And people need to get to the point where they're like, when I press this button, money went to the person I wanted it to go to. When I receive money, I understand how to access it. right? Like when people send emails, they're not thinking of TCP/IP and what the protocol is and information packets. They're just like, I click a button, this thing magically shoots to someone else, they read it, boom, that's an email. It's going to there. It's getting to there. Every single day, there's shitloads of people around the world working out of self-interest to improve the user interface to make it easier for people to use. And the crazy thing that sometimes it blows my mind is this idea that, okay, the metaphor to the internet, I think, is useful. And I actually really like using the metaphor of email when I talk about public and private keys, right? Like you give someone your email, they can send you an email. They can't go into your inbox and read your emails. And so your public key is like giving away your email address. Your private key is like your password to log into your email. Obviously, that's a very simplistic metaphor, but I think some people can kind of get that, right? They're like, well, okay, don't give my password, give my email to people who I want to receive emails from. It kind of makes sense. The idea that the internet is a good metaphor for Bitcoin, because they're both like, the internet is a technology, is a communication network that's global, permissionless, anyone can use it. Bitcoin is a global monetary network. The idea that if we had the opportunity to buy a piece of the internet when the internet started, not an internet company, a piece of the internet, such that the more people who use the internet, the more your piece of the internet is worth. Like, I always read Antonopoulos' book, The Internet of Money, and I never really grasped the depth of that statement, but it is not money for the internet. It is the internet of money. And that to me is so insane and really hits home the value proposition that owning a piece of the monetary network for the next that can potentially last for perpetually is pretty valuable. You know, if people are ready to hear that and can kind of start to wrap their head around it, I've told people that before and they're like, whoa. And it's like, yeah, I think that too sometimes, because it is pretty insane that we live in a time where you can buy a piece of the internet in any amount for so cheap. Or the internet of money, rather. Yeah, it's a crazy thing, and I think when technology like every time I go in and try and look at the new apps that are out there, it continually amazes me how much easier to use things are, even mobile wallets. And the idea that our relationship, I mean, the thing that makes me most bullish on Bitcoin is every single time I have an interaction with a legacy bank. Literally, I'm like, this is the bar. This is how low the bar is. In the world of the internet, I can't touch my money for 5 business days because people don't want to work on weekends. And like, it's so odd, right? And I think the bank of the future is an education hub where Bitcoiners can not necessarily, you know, the old bank, there was value in holding the gold because in order to have velocity of money and actually spend money, it's just so incredibly inefficient and friction filled if you're trying to transact in gold. So and I also think it's important to mention that like saying gold no longer is the best thing to use doesn't negate the fact that gold was incredibly important and served its role very well, right? Like saying gold is no longer the best option isn't saying gold's a bag of shit, we shouldn't have used it. It's like, it was the best thing until now, until the white paper came out. Then it fundamentally changed the landscape. And obviously Bitcoin's still a teenager, so it hasn't proven itself yet. But the bank of the future and the role of helping people de-risk taking custody of their Bitcoin, I think is really someone like a multi-sig administrator, where you, as an administrator, you are essentially an educator that helps individuals de-risk custodying their Bitcoin. You're not necessarily holding their thing and they need to ask permission to have it, because then you become the attack vector. But the idea of, okay, 3 people having, let's call it passwords for lack of a better word, 2 of those 3 having to come together, put their passwords together for a transaction to happen, you essentially create, instead of like a credit union, you create a Bitcoin union. And people come to you and they come there for education, right? It's like if you're not going there to just have a service provider, you're going there to learn how to serve yourself and keep your Bitcoin safe. And I think that the idea of that fundamentally changing what people acknowledge as a bank, I think is going to be really cool. And I think this is where the generation of Bitcoiners now, especially Orangepillers, like you can put yourself as a resident in a Bitcoin hub, and as an Orangepillar, provide a service that delivers people value to help them better understand Bitcoin. And if it's a value to them, then they pay you whatever it's worth. I think that is such a different world but I kind of see that's where things are going. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that yeah, the first of all, when the nature of trust is going to change. I mean, it's changing right now amongst Bitcoiners. For example, when I meet, which is not a frequent occurrence, when I meet someone who is a Bitcoin maximalist, right, who is really, he's a hardcore guy, I
How do you
immediately
define
trust.
that? How do you, just to put a pin in that, how do you define Bitcoin maximalist? Because that's another one that's subjective.
Well, I just organized a couple of weekends ago. So that I think 3 weeks ago, I had we made a meetup here in Rab, and basically, yeah, 12, 15 maxes showed up
Dude,
from
that's insanely good for
yeah,
rap.
not from just from Croatia, Serbia, Macedonia.
Cool.
We had some people who basically ran away from from Germany and Austria during the COVID dictatorship period. So they were here already, and we had let's say 25 people with their kids over the weekend here in Rab. So this is like, these people are really people I trust, even though the time I spent with them is not, it's not like my you know elementary school friend that I know for, I don't know, 25 years.
Sure.
Like, these people get it, and I know I can trust them. I know, for example, if something happens to me, that maybe my family can get in touch with some of them to help them retrieve maybe my cold storage setup, or whatever. Like,
it's like your own
and I
federation
think,
almost.
yeah, I think that Bitcoin is actually providing better trust, better ability to trust people, because the base layer is trustless, right? So, like with the gold banker, you are kind of you have to trust him. You kind of, like, he holds a lot of power over you, because
it's out of balance. It's out of balance.
It's out of balance. And here, if you are like if you are a Bitcoiner who is not trustworthy, or you are willing to lose your integrity, like, there's nothing much to gain, because and there's a lot to lose. So the kind of this trust dynamic is very different with Bitcoin, and that's solely because of the ability of people to take Bitcoin into their own custody, into their own possession, very, very easily and cheaply, versus gold, right? And and still you can transact with Bitcoin without your trusted third party. This is why trusted third parties can actually, your relationship with them can be much healthier, right? So it's and still I think that the opportunity for Bitcoin, like, for creating, let's say you live in a local a local community place. I mean, I live in a very small like Rab is like a couple of thousand people community, right? Hopefully growing over time, but it's still very, very small. It's not like a big city. But if you're, let's say, maybe you're living in a neighborhood, even though, like, in cities, in big cities, in this fiat standard, like, your neighborhood, you don't really know your neighbors, right? I mean, or you do know, but it's like, it depends again where you are living. Are you in some suburb, or more in like downtown or whatnot? But usually many people live together, kind of in close proximity to each other, but they don't really know each other so well. And I think Bitcoin is going to change that as well, because you will have these small communities formed where it's simply more efficient to have. I keep coming back to this and community banking and federated Chaumian mints idea, where you have, instead of having you running your own, I mean, you are running your own Lightning node, for example, but if you can piggyback 100 people more onto your node and allow them to use, your liquidity, your connectivity with others, so that you have less friction with daily, using Bitcoin for paying for your groceries and things like that. That's going to be very valuable. And this small communities, we are in earliest stages of that. Like if like Bitcoin is in Bitcoin on-chain network in 2022, Bitcoin Lightning Network is maybe like in Bitcoin in 2013, right? It's still very, 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 very early, sprawling. But you can see the structure, growing, and you can see these relationships being formed in real time, and that all of that is going to simply produce a world where it's just people will live much more fulfilled lives, simply because they will have lower time preference. They will, of course, not overnight, over time, right? I still think that the best way to basically get Bitcoin is just through time, right? I know for myself, when I was in 2014, when I bought my first couple of bucks worth of Bitcoin, even if someone came to me and really tried to kind of fill my head with much more knowledge about it, I still couldn't. I mean, you're asking too much.
You're not ready for it yet.
I still haven't experienced, right? I still haven't experienced this. You are talking about this huge, appreciation in purchasing power and whatnot. And I just bought my first $20 worth of Bitcoin, in July 2014. I still cannot get it. In August 2014, if the best, possible, like Michael Saylor or whoever literally sat with me and explained everything to me, I would maybe increase my position by something. But then when he would leave, I would still like lose conviction, and I would still get scared if the price would drop too much. So still, you have to have time, right? The time has to pass, and every day that the Bitcoin is not going away is a day that your understanding, your conviction, your comfort level is increasing. So it's like our generation of generation of Orangepillers. Most of us, I don't know anybody except maybe Michael Saylor and guys like that who got it so quickly. But maybe Michael Saylor got it, but he still had this, phase in 2013, I think, where he dismissed Bitcoin, and he's like, maybe he used this situation that he had, plus his vast business, experience, to really grasp what Bitcoin is. And he had the catalyst of Corona, market crash, and seeing what the governments around the world did in response to that, printed.
He experienced pain. He experienced existential pain of his company potentially not surviving. And so, I mean, the thing with Michael Saylor is his job, the only thing he needed to do in his life was to understand was to try and find a solution to the existential problem he faced with his company. So back to that thing, it's like all action is determined by pain. He experienced unimaginable socioeconomic pain as the CEO of a company and devoted his life energy to understanding this thing. And obviously he had the perfect foundation because he was a technologist. He understood the mobile wave. So he was like kind of like in the perfect position. But I think what you're saying is so important, where we like to think we can just, as Orangepillers, I think we can probably help people understand Bitcoin faster than we did, potentially, right? Like, we all want to be the kind of person we wish we had when we started learning about Bitcoin. But you can't escape the temporal element that it takes time to digest Bitcoin. It takes, listening to podcasts, reading material, having conversations, testing your objections, hearing people's objections, Like these things are not, you can't skip over that, right? It's a mandatory rite of passage, which still has some variety, a variation in how long that takes. But at the end of the day, there is no circumventing the temporal element. Like you don't go from no understanding to your whole life savings in Bitcoin. You just don't. Unless you experience a mountain of pain. Unless you live in Turkey, Venezuela, El Salvador, whatever. And I think the idea that it is going to take time, and Bitcoiners have a low time preference, luckily, is a good thing. And you're right. I think we love this romantic notion that trust no longer is needed in society, right? With Bitcoin, it's trustless. Don't trust, verify. I don't think that's. I don't even think that's something that we should try and get towards, because I think trust is a fundamental human element. But like you said, the nature of trust is changing for the better, where it's not absolute trust. It's not binary anymore, right? It's I get to based on me understanding things, I get to determine how much trust I put in someone. And I've also developed better strategies to determine who is trustworthy. And I think the really cool thing that you said is like this whole notion that you might not know when you meet a Bitcoin maxi in you know, a 30-minute conversation to kind of like test like who they are, what they're about, what is their knowledge. It's almost like being a Bitcoin maximalist or a sound money maximalist is a proxy for understanding someone way deeper than just the superficial hello, how are you? You know, it's like, I mean, this is probably a bad example because I don't actually think this is a valid proxy anymore, but like I go to a doctor that has a degree in medicine. That is my proxy to prove that this guy or girl is actually a doctor and I can listen to them, right? So like there's some sort of vetting proxy that's there. I don't think that says anything about their understanding of health, but aside from that, being a Bitcoin maxi is a proxy to, oh, you've done the work, you understand, you've put it, being a Bitcoin maxi is proof of work that you understand a lot of shit about the world and you're probably someone worth hanging out with. That at least, you know, that might be a weird way of putting it, but that's my sense of things. When I meet a maxi, it's like, I might know you better than I know some of my good friends because I know a lot of things about how you view the world and why you view the world that way. And that's a special thing. It's like, to me, Bitcoin maxis that love talking about Bitcoin and have the time to do so are like unicorns. When you find a unicorn, you're like, I gotta make sure I keep talking about that unicorn because I don't know when I'll come across another one. And I think that this is really the impetus of these conversations, right? Orange pillars. It's like if hopefully there's 2 orange pillars out there that are listening to this and are like, yeah, we could have a conversation too. And we put all the conversations in one place and people understand that the stewards of whatever value comes in that the world is getting for these conversations is being put to good use. I think we're going to get a lot of good collective insights from just having these conversations. And that's a really good meetup turnout. Like how long? So I think organizing meetups it's another low time preference thing, right? Like someone that organizes a meetup puts a shitload of energy into promoting it and 3 people show up. They can either look at that as, okay, well, this is a start, or they can look at it as there's not enough interest. I'm just not going to do this anymore. So, you know, what was the work involved? What are the lessons you learned in organizing a meetup that you could hand over to another orange pillar so that they can be successful at gathering people for a meetup? What would you say are the big challenges, and how did the meetup go? Like, how long was it? What did you talk about? I'm very curious.
Yeah, it was a weekend meetup. Well, to be fair, I had a huge Bitcoiner Gigi helping me out.
Nice.
He's here as well in Rab. He's in a secret island. So basically he has, I mean, he pushed me a bit to do this, to organize it and have some Bitcoiners that I have been talking with, for some time, simply meet in meet space, meet live, because that's completely, it's different, right? It's for sure. So we had a weekend here, Saturday, Sunday. We roasted the lamb, had a blast, grilled some meat and so on. Had a walk next day, breakfast, it's like just a weekend So we didn't really have so much time to really experience everything that you can do here, because you can go, fishing, hiking, you can ride a kayak, or whatever, just or visit the sheep herds. And there's a lot of things that you can do here, but
It's funny
yeah,
because everything you
definitely.
just said seems they seem like activities that our Bitcoiners
Yeah,
would like. You tell you, at first, yeah, you go
yeah,
visit a
definitely.
sheep
It's
herd, they'd
like,
be like, "Fuck that." Bitcoiners are like, "Yeah, that's a food source. I want to meet that person."
yeah, definitely, definitely. And then it's amazing because you like this people who live here, right? So they now have this like this new kind of tourist market, so to speak, Bitcoiners who
Yeah.
they what they see is people who are, you know who are pretty generous. First of all, like Bitcoiners are not cheap, really. And that's I also noticed that this is something that helps me with the orange pilling. Like people see that I'm not faced with this huge, it's inflation, it's oh my god, what's happening, what's going on. And I tell them, they see that that I can afford nice cuts of meat, for example, or that I my family is just not we don't feel the pinch
Yeah.
of the financial situation. And many people do, even if they have maybe they have real estate, maybe they have a couple of houses, but they have mortgages on them. They have these loans that are pressing on them, and the interest rates are going up, so they are stressed, right? So but they see you, and and it's life is going kind of well for you. And then when I say, well, listen, like, you are experiencing prices going up, but frankly, I'm experiencing, since corona crash, I'm experiencing prices going down like 5x for me, even
Yeah.
with the Bitcoin crash. There like March 2020 Bitcoin crash, in corona crash, was like in low 4,000s, for a couple of days, right?
Right.
And if you were buying Bitcoin then you're up very much
Everything's
since
getting
then.
cheaper.
Everything is getting cheaper for you. The gas is
Yeah.
getting cheaper, the food is
Yeah.
getting cheaper, the housing is getting cheaper, clothing, everything is getting cheaper for you. You're able to buy more and higher quality stuff for less, basically. And people notice that, people they see, they and then when you say, well, you can I can thank Bitcoin for that. Not I couldn't do that with traditional fiat instruments. I mean, I could get into debt and try to pretend that I can afford this new car, but it's not like you cannot really afford it, right?
Right.
If this car is keeping you up at night, and the price of gas is going up, and you have your payments to pay, and you have your job is not maybe so, you're not so sure if you're going to have a job,
Yeah.
if the recession really hits. And now you have this guy who is like cheering people up. He's very optimistic, he's talking about this bright orange future. And then it's easy, it's easier than to for them to get get why they should also start saving in Bitcoin.
Well, they have to make
So
sense of that, right? Like that to
yeah,
them, when they hear that and see, and more, I think hearing it is one thing, seeing it, witnessing it
exactly.
on a repeated basis is a totally other thing. They must reconcile that. They must make sense of this makes no sense to me. How the fuck is this guy able to be so calm and say that his purchasing power is going up? Like, this doesn't make sense. And I think that confusion is an impetus to understand, right? And that's where like more questions come or more self-directed research come, where it's like, what is this Bitcoin thing? Like those are powerful nudges. powerful touch points to kind of build the touch point repository that then hits a critical threshold to where people actually want to take action.
Yeah.
And in times of great pain, lies great opportunity, because every pain point of, and I do my best. I've been around people, friends and family, that complain a lot. And, I don't think they're self-aware enough to realize how much they complain. But I made a pact with myself, like, I'm never going to complain about shit. There's enough people complaining about stuff. And once you sort of make that pact with yourself, you get really good at identifying when people are complaining, because you have to identify in yourself in order not to do it. And I've seen it as like this windfall of opportunities, where every time someone complains about prices, every time someone complains about something socioeconomically, is an opportunity to ask them more questions to determine, like, how well did they understand that pain point? How well did they understand why gas is more expensive, why food is more expensive, all these things. And it really, without ever even saying the word Bitcoin, you often get them to really go down to, like, oh, that's what they think it is, which it really isn't. Let's see if we can get them to go a bit lower so they can start to understand that the money is the root of all this stuff. And it doesn't have to be that anymore. Like, they come to the realization that the money's the problem. And then there's a really good opportunity to say, well, Bitcoin solved that problem. And if you want to understand it or hear my perspective, I'm willing to share it. But I think, in times of great pain, it's like, especially socioeconomic pain, which I don't think is going to end and may actually accelerate, unfortunately. I wish we weren't in this situation, even as a Bitcoiner. Like, I wish there wasn't massive suffering and pain that will result from all the fuckery that we did with the fiat system for so long. But I think at this point it's inevitable. The world that we have is going to get nastier before it gets better. But we have this alternate world, and every conversation you have about Bitcoin is essentially building a bridge to invite people to this better world. Like you said, where you can just be calm, even as the world is imploding. I mean, that's a bit extreme, but the deeper you understand it, the more obvious you see the implosion. You have this sense of hope where you can be happy knowing that there is an alternate experience you can have in the world, and it's like the ultimate game, right? Like, how many people, if life is a game to be played and enjoyed, and the game right now is and you find motivation in playing the game with the rule of, how can I bring as many people from a place of suffering to a place of flourishing? Then orange pilling is the ultimate game, and it's fun. And I think you're so right, where, like, every time you hear someone have a problem that they've misdiagnosed, gives you a chance to get better at helping people understand how to truly accurately diagnose the problem and then take action to solve it, right? And there's lots of orange pilling opportunities in the coming years, I think.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, definitely a lot. So I think also that the economic suffering is going to increase, but like all of this suffering is going to transform itself. Like, again, like your Zen master, I used to spend so many hours listening to Thich Nhat Hanh, and he likes to say that, how, like, the suffering, no mud, no lotus.
Yes.
If you want lotus flower, which is beautiful, fragrant, there is a mud, basically, that's not so pleasant, but basically lotus flowers grow out of mud. Yes. So our happiness is growing out of our suffering. So I don't think that even, some people they just have to go through the suffering. I had to go through many suffering, and still will have to go through many sufferings to actually experience happiness, right? So,
some would say happiness is making meaning out of suffering, right? Like I think Thich Nhat Hanh, that's from him as well, where it's like, the goal is not to suffer, the goal is to create meaning out of suffering, and to suffer well. That's the big thing.
To suffer well, to learn how to suffer well and how to transform suffering, right? Yes. Because literally suffering is like it's like a fertilizer, right? So if you don't know what to do with it, like, you are just going to get swamped with the stink. But if you know what to do with it, you can transform it into fruit, right? Yes. It's all, everything is just energy, right? So basically, Now learning how to do it is another thing. There is it's simple, like just become aware of your breathing, just start converting some of your money that you are making into Bitcoin, and chill out. Don't just take your time, and this is like people are just I mean, we are really living in a very interesting time of
I
change.
think
I mean,
that's an
change is
understatement.
constant. It was always changing, but now with internet, we are we can see this change all around the world. I mean, I didn't go much far in the last 2 years from here, but I saw like many different crazy things happening around the world with other people, and this is what you were talking about, this collective kind of consciousness, this idea, and we now talking with each other is marvelous. It's just amazing. Like
Just the fact that we
so,
can do this is magic.
yeah,
Like the fact that
yeah, it really is magic, right?
Yeah.
And as a civilization, actually, we have come so far. So like if we just take a look at, like I'm sitting here in my office and just taking a look at every single little piece of thing, it's like a marvelous thing. Just this pencil, it's so, like, when you just think about it a little bit, how many people, how many engineering hours, how many transport, logistics, someone had to mine the metal out of the ground, smelt it, transport it somewhere, design this pen, connect it together, bring it here, then you just my laptop here, my phone, my watch, everything. It's just so crazy how marvelous the world can be. And then we are kind of like, I really truly believe that humanity is really kind of awakening in a much higher state at the moment, and this process is basically accelerating. And in 10 years we are going to like blink an eye, and probably we I mean, maybe I'm really going crazy, but I think we are going to be able to do, well, I'm not going to go there too much, but I think we will become so powerful as a species, that I don't know what to say. It's like we are growing up very quickly,
Yes.
especially, and Bitcoin is massive catalyst in this, because literally we are using money that's basically representation of energy. It's energy money. It's like you can imagine transferring converted massive amounts of energy from one person to another, right, in this metaphysical space. It's crazy. It's like and I know many, I love when Bitcoiners go deep. I love Bitcoiners can get very cosmic very quickly.
Yes.
So I love that as well. But then I also love when you can like just speak very simple language. Like I have some people here that are very simple,
And there's an elegance to simplicity also. There's an elegance to that where, like, I aspire to live a more simple life, because in today's world, it's very easy, whether you intentionally do it or not, to get roped into a life of complexity. It is a complex world.
Exactly.
And I think our biology is designed for simplicity. And so the pursuit of health is actually the pursuit of simpler, natural living. But yeah, and even the pencil thing you said, it's like, it's incredible that we were able to coordinate at scale globally to create that pencil, let alone computer and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And we did that with a shitty tool for trade. We did it with the best tool we had, but the tool is inferior. Now that we have a better tool, it's almost hard to fathom.
Yeah.
Like, we suck at exponential thinking. We know that. Humans are linear thinkers. When you ask someone, if you folded a piece of paper 50 times, how high would the stack be? And they're like, oh, maybe like a meter. It's like, actually, it's the distance to the sun. It's like, we suck at exponential thinking. But this whole idea that we have perfected a tool that facilitates trade, which is money. So if we can make pencils, if you can get a pencil from China for $1, with a shitty trade tool. Now that we have the ultimate tool for trade, what are we going to be able to do? And I think there's a fundamental disconnect when I have conversations with people and you start to talk about these, like zoomed out things and zoom into the future and sort of like do these thought experiments of like, wow, I wonder what's possible with this technology. There's often a disconnect with people who don't understand it because they're like, they're like, that's a crazy person. Yeah,
Yeah,
that person's naively optimistic.
yeah,
They don't know what they're talking about. Like the world is burning. What are you talking about? It's like, well, yeah, but focus on the good things because
yeah,
it's like lower your time preference, zoom out, find something meaningful to learn about, and you end up seeing that all of the suffering today now has a context. Because without context, it just sucks.
yep,
But when you have a context to say this is needed to get to the next world, like there must be massive suffering to induce enough pain that people have a need to understand the better system. That people like we need pushes so that people get pushed
yep,
towards doing the work to understand the thing that brings us to a better world. So it's all about like you said, without the mud, there's no lotus. Without this suffering, we cannot get to a Bitcoin world. And so now it's like the mental shift of the more suffering I witness, the quicker I know we're getting to the place.
yep,
And the more I find purpose in helping us get there, because the sooner someone can understand this and begin their journey, which takes time, doesn't happen overnight, the more they can emanate that in their own network, the quicker they can become a node to emanate this positive message of empowerment that is accessible to everyone. I think that's that is the most important thing for me. I think is this idea that no one is excluded from accessing this. The only
yep,
thing that excludes you is the unwillingness to learn about it, and it's like the most beautiful channel for personal responsibility. I think health is the ultimate one because I think I consider my full-time job, my sole motivator and purpose in life is to my job is health, is to be healthy, which allows me to do all the things I love to do and hopefully leave the world in a better place than when I found it. But yeah, I think the positivity, the giving context to the suffering, knowing how hopeful the future is like, it would be hard for me to really live a fulfilling life right now if it wasn't for Bitcoin. I think about that often because I don't know what I would be looking forward to in today's world or how I would contextualize the suffering, maybe in the direction of health, but it's a pretty special time for us to be alive right now. Like no one else will live in a time like this. This is probably the craziest time ever because of technology and because of this confluence of the perfect storm of so many things having to be turned over in such a short period of time that it's going to be chaotic, but it's also going to get us to the best world we've ever lived in faster than ever before. Like the transitioning is happening so quick because the velocity created by technology is overwhelming, right? Like it's like going 5Gs in a jet. Like you might pass out and get fucked up because it's so intense. But if you knew you're getting somewhere awesome at warp speed, then it makes it worth it.
yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm really interested. You, what would you say to someone? My father is like, health-wise, he's not in a very, very good position. Like, but on the other hand, like he spent so many years, with, his obesity problem, and he has many layers of psychology around it and so on. But what would be like maybe an advice or maybe some tips, simple, actionable, what can we do to improve our health generally, but not too much to do immediately, because you can always start with massive plans and so on, and then get disappointed when you cannot stick to it. But what do you do that's improving your health, that you can share, and I and my family can start like implementing in our lives to up the health game?
Yeah, I think so. The health network I work for, what we do is we build digital tools that empower people to restore excellent health. So we don't tell them what to do. We build tools that help, and the tools are built to provide to embody three things, which I have found. And, I work with 180 people around the world that are all obsessed with health. We share our stories, we get collective insights, we put together this collective intelligence into a 360-day commitment where, like, 1 hour a day for 360 days, you commit that energy to working on the process of understanding health and making changes, small changes. And the three things, like myself, and then we have a program director. We basically are the ones that are designing this thing. We evolve it each year. The three things that I've found to be most important for health are commitment, clarity, and community. Without any of those are like fundamental elements. If you don't have those, it's really hard to make meaningful progress. So what I would say to someone who is motivated, it starts with a motivation to improve your health and a mindset shift of going from victim, where, the world is happening to me and I can't do anything about my health. It's just, it is what it is, from victim to hero. And that shift comes from, I am responsible for my health. I am capable of making changes. Now I have to embark with the process of figuring out what to do, right? So it starts with commitment. Then you need clarity of, like, what are things I can actually do? And I think a really important one that people often underestimate and it lacks, and it's the hardest one to nail, is community, right? Who around you is supporting you to witness what you're doing? Because if no one witnesses you doing something, it carries no meaning. And the way changes create meaning is if someone is witnessing you do that. And conversely, you witnessing and supporting someone else making changes. So I think community is really important. The starting point in this 360-day experience is, what does health mean to you? How do you define health? What would success at being healthy look like? Because no one actually starts with that. And the fact that they don't have a concise personal definition, and no one can define it for you, you must determine your own definition. If you start by defining health and then you say, okay, I'm going to commit 15 minutes tomorrow to doing something that will improve my health. And I often tell people to start with a walk. A 15-minute walk with no technology is what everyone can do tomorrow. And that is like the first block they mine of health in their blockchain of health, which is the ongoing process of figuring out how to take better care of yourself and make changes. So I would say, just have a conversation about, how do you define health? Share your definition, receive his, have a conversation about it, and say, what's one thing that you're willing and able to do and that I can keep you accountable to? Because the community piece, the important part there is, if you tell someone you're going to do something and you know that they will ask if you did it, you're way more likely to do it. So, and start incredibly small. And I think one of the biggest enhancers, a simple tool that anyone can make, is buy a calendar specifically for health. Every day you show up and do something to work on your health, you put an X on the calendar. And at the start, it's like hard to it's hard to remember to do it. So put that calendar somewhere where you cannot help but see it every day, on your pillow, on the toilet, whatever. And when you string them together, it goes from the work is to show up each day to then just not break the chain. And the bigger your chain is, the less you want to break it. And that is almost like a behavior design piece that's incredibly simple, that gets you liftoff, right? It's like going into space. Liftoff takes the most energy. It's so hard to fight against the atmospheric pressure. Like, the world is designed around disease, basically. Once you reach orbit, it's easy, because the work you've done to get there gives you a base understanding for how to continue the process. And if you view it as a process, I think, just to tie this up, the one thing that's beneficial about defining health is that most people define health as a state. So they see a picture of someone who's fit and like no fat, and they're like, that's health. I can't fucking get there. I'm so far from that. So if you define it as a state, it becomes almost unattainable and not even worth approaching, because you're never going to get there. Whereas if you view health as a process, then showing up to go on a 15-minute walk tomorrow means you're healthy that day. Right? Regardless of your state, doesn't matter. You haven't lost any weight, whatever. You're healthy because you've taken an action step. And I think putting your motivation on the act of doing something instead of being in a state means that it's a much more enjoyable process. And in this experience that we've designed, it's actually a lot based on Bitcoin. Layer 1 is a lesson taught by teachers. Layer 2 is conversations by people who have gone through the initiation. And there's a proof of work element, which is the first day you start this, you start a logbook. Every day you write something in there. It doesn't even matter if you just write, I wrote something today, but that is your proof of work that you showed up in your health process. And, we've been doing this this is the fourth year, I think, of this project of how do we create a digital tool that helps people be healthy without telling them what to do, but just empowering them with some fundamentals, so that they feel empowered, right? And putting them in pods of people who are doing it together and engage with each other, I think is the most important thing. Like, we partner people up with a learning partner who's at a similar stage, has similar aspirations. We put them in a pod of, anywhere from like 4 to 10 people that have a digital platform to communicate. And they go through this. And at the end of the year, a lot of people that go through that are actually health professionals. And for them, it's not actually a journey of learning, it's a journey of unlearning.
Yeah.
Because you have to unlearn all the bullshit disease care that you've been programmed and start to learn health. And really what we're creating is, by the end of that, if you're a health professional, you might not have a degree, but you have this logbook, this proof of work that you're actually capable of helping others with their health, because you took the initiatory process to gain a better, broader understanding of health so you can be a healthy human. So yeah, the two things are define health and do something to pick something that you can do tomorrow. And just continue the streak, right? Continue, a block every 10 minutes, a health block every day. Just string them together and don't stop that thing from ticking. And it doesn't matter what you do, just do something and put yourself around people who will help witness what you're doing, create meaning in it, and support you when it gets hard. Because it will get hard. There will be challenges where you're like, I don't want to do this anymore, or I don't know what to do. And yeah, so it's funny, I see so many parallels in the journey of health and Bitcoin, where it's mostly misunderstandings that stop people from taking action.
Yeah.
And once they have clarity and they've actually made a commitment that this thing is important enough to work on, it actually is. I think health done right requires no discipline. That's a weird thing to say, but maybe not no discipline, but minimal discipline. You don't have to force yourself to show up to do something you actually truly want to do.
Yeah.
And if you don't want to do it, why don't, most people who don't feel good don't want to not feel good. There's a weird disconnect, right? Someone who is overweight doesn't want to be overweight. Most of the time, they fundamentally know what they need to do to not be overweight. That's the other interesting thing. They're just not able to put that knowledge into action because they don't have clarity on what the path forward is. And the fact that you have to start incredibly small in order for these behaviors to actually be repeatable. And the goal is to repeat the behaviors. The goal is not to do the thing. The goal is to repeat the behaviors to get to the place that you will never reach because it's a lifelong process, but that you aspire to get to. And that's why it's so important to start by defining, where is that place I want to get to? Because it will be different for everyone, right? For some people, it might be, I want to be able to play with my grandkids when I'm 90. Therefore, I need to be able to move. I need to be able to, not be in terrible shape. So what do I need to do that? Well, I just need to move tomorrow. And that's it. And then as you feel a calling to it, you do more, or you go deeper, or you learn more about certain elements of health. And we divide health into 6 pillars is our mental model. So it's movement, sleep, food, the mind, community, and money. Money is a pillar of health. We teach Bitcoin. And so that's my access. That's my outlet for orange pilling people, is we have people going through this program that come to it for health. And they end up, I personally think Bitcoin is the key to health, because when you have a lower time preference mindset, you can take a lower time preference with your health, which is the only way to actually achieve health, is by doing it gradually over time, long term. It's not about what I do today. It's what I've done, what I do each day. And it's just a journey of playful exploration. Doesn't have to necessarily be insanely hard drudgery or crazy work. It has to be something you fundamentally enjoy. And I think most people in the health realm are there claiming that they are the solution to your health problem. That's the problem. And if you've been told that enough times, and that's been reinforced, then the mindset underneath that is that I cannot ever take ownership. I must rely on others who know the solution to my problems. It's kind of the same with money, right? Like, you don't know how money works, so you need to come to me, pay me, and I'll put your money somewhere, and that's the way you should do it. When in reality, it's like our mission at the Foot Collective, this health network, is empower people to reclaim responsibility for their health. And that is like drilled into everything we do. And if an opportunity comes up and it doesn't align with that, we don't do it. And so all the tools we build are to empower people to build confidence, to undergo the hero's journey and succeed on their quest to restore excellent health. So that's probably a way longer answer than it need to be.
No, no, not, I mean, it's I love it, because I could definitely use help and advice in this area, because I mean, personally, I spent like basically since I was in high school, with this on and off cycles where I would like sometimes I would, well, this is pre-Bitcoin, but I still have some area to improve in my health. But
we all do.
I basically used to, yeah, we all do. But I used to basically have these phases where I would like spend, I don't know, 6 months to a year, with I don't know, working out and eating well, and getting into shape and so on. And then I would like basically walk everything back and get fat again, and sloppy, and then go back again into
Sure.
And all of this, like, kind of not taking things very not seriously, but just
consistency is the biggest thing.
Consistency, yeah, that's because, for example, especially when you mentioned that you should get a calendar and basically X every time you want to string these blocks together, don't break the chain. That's actually, this technique was what helped me learn how to meditate. Basically, I had an app, Headspace, where I basically every time I did my 10-minute session, which was, it's not a lot, but it accumulates over time. It's a process. So I kind of I reached, I don't know, 860 days or something when I broke my chain for the first time. And
that's a good
remember
chain.
Yeah, it's a massive chain. So I know this this aspect of being consistent with it. And really, yeah, you really motivated me. Now I'm gonna take a walk tomorrow. And I just wanted to ask you, so you said that 15-minute walk without technology. So do you recommend not getting an Apple Watch or tracking? Because I also used to be like really into this quantify yourself or whatnot.
Yeah.
Like measure everything, measure my sleep cycle, measure my number of steps, calories, whatever whatever I was doing. And it's like, it is, I mean, personally, I found it like helpful for kind of motivational, basically. It's something to measure, so it keeps me going. But I also experienced that it's kind of like with Apple Watch. I bought the Apple Watch last summer, and I was walking every day until November last year, when we had this Corona craziness. And then I stopped, stopped going to walk every single evening, because we had the protests that I kind of started to attend, and the protests would end too late, and I stopped my streak. So that's not, again, that's also not a solution. Like, it's, and sometimes you are not you don't have technology, or you don't have the internet connection on you, and you cannot really log your workout or whatnot, and that can be an excuse to actually not to basically not do it. And so I like that you said that no technology walk. So I'm gonna probably try it, exactly as you said, because I don't know when was the last time when I actually took a walk without anything. no phone, no,
Yeah. I
just
mean,
a walk.
I
So
love podcasts, and the problem is I can listen to a
yeah,
podcast all the time now. And what I was realizing was that when I say no technology, really what I'm trying to get at is no phone, because I think the temptation to take pictures of things or to
yeah,
look at your phone, or to listen to a podcast, which,
yeah, yeah,
listening to podcasts is good, but if you do it all the time, you're never
yeah,
spending time in solitude, it can come at a consequence. So really what I meant by that is just like a present walk, being
yeah,
present in the moment. Um, just a little nugget on tools. I think your Apple Watch or tracking mechanisms for sleep, whatever it might be, they're tools. And oftentimes, tools are useful when we start using them, and they reach a point where they're no longer serving us.
yeah,
And I think with a lot of biofeedback, quantifying things, they can be useful to gain awareness, or to motivate you initially. But eventually they get to a point where actually they inhibit your ability to become self-aware. Like, for example, I know people that started using a sleep tracker. It made them more aware of their sleep and how they were sleeping. But it got to a point that when they woke up and felt like they had a great sleep and they looked at their sleep tracker and it said they
yeah,
didn't, they immediately were like, oh, I didn't have a good sleep. So like I think it's good to reintroduce yourself to a sense of literacy, body literacy and awareness. But at a certain point, you grow out of it, and you can then rely on your like internal literacy, like body literacy, to tell you whether you sleep well or not, instead of just a device. And what's interesting about this health experience we designed, this year is the first year that we started accepting payment in SATs, enrollment fees in SATs, and we started paying teachers, because we have teachers all around the world. There's like,
mhm,
I think there's like 15 or 16 different countries that teachers are from. We pay them in SATs. So every time a batch comes in, we offer a 25% discount if they pay in Bitcoin. So a lot of that, like, people will say, well, I don't know about Bitcoin, but I'll pay 25% less, which is like $250 discount. And so, the goal is to turn this into something that can appeal to Bitcoiners. And even in RAB, one thing I thought about, like, I do want to come visit, hopefully October, November, I can come visit. The idea of creating a value for value health hub to replace a lot of disease care is very appealing to me. And what that looks like, and I do it in Ottawa, I do it where I live already. I basically say, if you need help with your health, you can come hang out with me for an hour. I'm mostly going to ask you questions, and whatever you find it's worth, you can pay me.
yeah,
Some people pay a little, some people pay a lot. And I think the idea of value for value and a health hub instead of a disease care, you don't go somewhere for treatment. You go somewhere to get clarity and to be shown tools that are available to you. Like, we have a foot and ankle health kit. It's like $85, and it's a framework for understanding foot and ankle problems so that you can take ownership of them. Right? Like, I used to be a physical therapist. People come in, they oftentimes just want to get rid of symptoms. And I don't have enough time to explain to them in depth to understand fully, like, if I'm giving you something to do, I don't want to give you something to do. I want to help you understand why I chose that thing for you to do, because it's actually not rocket science. It's very simple. And if I can do that, then when you have knee pain, you don't have to come back to me. You understand the framework. So you just apply the framework to your knee pain, and you have a method to explore with some process, right? You're not like just guessing, because if you're just guessing and you're not measuring and determining if something helps, well, it's not very motivating to keep it up, because you have no feedback to reinforce that what you're doing is working. And they're incredibly simple things, right? And the idea that you could have a health hub where people can come in anytime, or they can book an appointment, a family can come in, and you literally just have an open health discussion. I think a health guide, an effective health guide, is one that doesn't tell you what to do, is one that asks you the right questions for you to figure out what to do, which is way harder, and also requires you to unravel a shitload of programming if you were trained as a health professional, because you're trained to think you have the answers. You must have the answers for people. Their health is your job. It's super fucked up, because health is an inside job, and you don't have the answers for anyone.
exactly.
But you can ask the right questions and share your perspective on what you've learned in your life. So, really, it's like, health professionals, being a health guide should come from proof of work, which is your own health, not from a proxy of some degree that shows you're good at taking tests. Because I know a shitload of health professionals that are insanely unhealthy, and yet think, and they're good people and they're well-intentioned, but they're suffering just as much as everyone else, because they don't understand health. All they understand is how to manage disease, and those are fundamentally different things. So yeah, maybe we'll chat about that. And maybe we do a Bitcoiner meetup when we have a health conversation.
Yeah, definitely.
Make health a topic because if I can leave this freaking dictatorship of Canada in at the end of this year, I do want to come and just visit RAB for 30 days, mostly because I want to scout. I want to scout the mining potential there. I think that would be very interesting to go around and see like how much stranded energy is there here? How much of a market is there for miners to be able to come drop a block? Like what is the environmental ecosystem, political, energy, people? So let's wrap this up because I mean 2 hours flies by very quick. But you know, if you're game to do a 2 hour conversation once a month and we can coordinate to
Definitely.
do that,
For sure, for sure.
I think there's probably a never ending, you know, bucket of things that we can continue to talk about, even if it's, you know, even if we don't have a plan sometimes and we just shoot the shit. I think it's I find it extremely satisfying to talk about Bitcoin with people who like to talk about Bitcoin and find it a big element of purpose in their life to help spread the message of Bitcoin, because you can learn so much by just having like a good faith conversation of sharing stories. Sharing stories is a powerful way to learn. Like most of what we do in this health program is just people sharing stories of struggles they've had or victories they've had or of insights they've had. And then we try and package all the insights together so that, you know, the whole is greater than some of its parts. Same thing with that first quote that we mentioned. It's like, if you and I are having conversations, we're learning from each other, we're unpacking topics maybe we wouldn't have the opportunity to unpack in a conversational dialogue. We're probably going to learn from it. If we can, you know, we didn't touch on digital education, but maybe that'll be a good focus next time, is like, we can literally, for zero production cost, record this, plug it into the internet, anyone can watch it anywhere for free and learn from what we talked about. Like, how insane is that?
Definitely. I know I'm looking forward because I'll definitely pick up some. I wrote down your tips at least until our next meetup. I'm gonna try to start you know, work on my health a bit more, and I'm gonna piggyback off of you so you can check how I'm doing next time when we meet.
Well, shoot me a message if you have any questions. If you have any questions, shoot me a message. You have my WhatsApp. So, you know, I think once again, community is that pillar of health that I think gets underestimated. And you know, even for any Bitcoiner listening to this, if you reach out to me on Twitter, Nobody Caribou, you know, I don't know how much time I have to reply to DMs, but if I can, I will. And I love doing it. So yeah. Thanks for taking the time, Pavao. Thanks everyone for listening.
Thank you. Thank you, Nick.
We'll eventually figure out a way. I mean, I think the event, this is kind of like a pilot show of like, you know, do you enjoy doing this? Do I enjoy doing this? Do other people enjoy listening to it? So I'll put it on the stove. We'll see what people say. And I think if it is something that we both enjoy doing and that people enjoy listening to, if we're able to plug this show, or let's call it Orangepillers, into a node that collects funds that we put towards the mission in RAB, whether that's sending sats to people or organizing meetups or whatever. Let's say that whatever revenue comes from this goes towards the mission of orange pilling RAB, which I hope to be part of in Meatspace at some point. You know, it's not set up yet, but I think that will be our thing to work towards. Because if we, you know, who knows, if we accumulate a lot of episodes, people like it, there might be a lot of sats that we can hand out in RAB or you know, sats to pay for your time to go around and continue the mission of orange pilling RAB. So yeah, I'm stoked at the potential.
Nice. Thank you very much, and looking forward for our next talk.
Sounds good. I'll end the recording and then we'll just wrap up right after. See you later, folks.